Bonjour, Benajé Canoe, Dijnaka, Mikanakto Dam, Peguis and Dunji, St. Peter's Noon Gum and Dijnada. My name is Earl Stevenson. My spirit name is Eagle Gliding. I am from Peguis First Nation. I am the legal counsel for Peguis Child and Family Services. Today, we're going to talk about our new child welfare legislation that Peguis First Nation has developed. This new legislation is called Honoring Our Children, Families and Nation Act. This legislation is a reflection and a response to Bill C-92 that came out on January 1st, 2020. Bill C-92, also known as an Act Respecting First Nations, Inuit, Métis Children, Family and Youth, affirms the right for First Nations to create their own child welfare legislation. Peguis First Nation Chief and Council have asked Peguis Child and Family Services to do the groundwork to create this new legislation, and that's what we're here to discuss. As a result, we're asking our membership to review the contents of the Act and to provide feedback through our engagement sessions over the next several months. Your feedback is very important to us. It informs how we could possibly improve upon this draft Act, and it's important that we hear what you have to say. So I invite you to take an opportunity to review this Act, internalize it, think about it, and provide comments to us. You can email your comments to Peguis CFS at the following email address, feedback@peguiscfs.org. Again, this community engagement sessions are going to be occurring over the next several months, and we invite you to stay tuned for the upcoming dates as they become posted on the Peguis First Nation website and the Peguis Child and Family Services website so that you can become more involved. Again, there's a feedback form in an information package that we will be mailing out to all our members 18 years of age and over so that they have an opportunity to review this Act. Feedback is important. We invite it. We welcome it. We want to hear from you. Currently, Peguis CFS has to operate under the Untitled CFS Act. The Untitled CFS Act practically controls everything that CFS has to do with respect to child welfare. So it occupies a large area of the child welfare law field. However, last year, Bill C-92 came into force and it created national standards that agencies such as Peguis CFS have to meet when it comes to providing child and family services to Indigenous children. However, next year, once our new Act comes into play, our new Act will occupy a major portion of the child welfare law, and we will be displacing the Manitoba CFS Act for the most part. The Manitoba CFS Act will be operational with respect to the court processes, and Bill C-92 will still be operational with respect to the minimum standards that are established within that Act. So next year, we should be in a position to be occupying most of the area of the law when it comes to child welfare. I'd like to introduce you to our new legislation. It's called Honoring Our Children, Families and Nation Act. The preamble to the Act talks about the fact that Peguis has an inherent right to jurisdiction over child and family services. What this means is that we have that ability to create this law and implement this law pursuant to the wishes of leadership and our membership. Once this law comes into force, the law will apply to our members wherever they reside in Canada, and this law is national in scope. Again, the purpose of this Act reflects the fact that it affirms our right and jurisdiction over child and family services. The primary focus of this Act is on prevention and also a focus on reunification for families. There is a comprehensive definitions section in the Act, and these definitions help to interpret the purposes of the Act. The law asks that everybody be treated equally, including non-binary and two-spirited people. And the Act itself is going to be administered with the best interest of the child always at play. Peguis First Nation is exercising its jurisdiction in accordance with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, as well as the Canadian Constitution Act of 1982 and Section 35. The authority for this Act also provides for dispute resolution mechanisms, and again, this Act applies nationally wherever our members reside. Within the scope of this Act, you will see that Peguis Child and Family Services will be the agency that will provide child and family services to our members where they reside in the province. Policies and regulations will also be developed that enhance details with respect to the Act. People who serve as sources of referral will have their identity remain confidential. As well, the agency and its employees provide essential services under the Act. There are three principles from Bill C-92 that have been incorporated into this Act. The first principle is the best interest of the child. That's outlined at Section 6.1 of the Act. The second principle is one of cultural continuity. Again, that assists in the interpretation of how this Act is to be applied, and the fact that cultural components and heritage components are very important with respect to providing child and family services. The third principle is substantive equality, essentially meaning that all children are to be treated equally, no matter their ability. The provision of child and family services are to be provided in a manner that takes into account the following: the child's need for safety, security, health, and well-being, the child's culture, an opportunity for the child to know their family and community, as well as the promotion of substantive equality between the child and other children. As mentioned earlier, the national standards from Bill C-92 were incorporated into this Act as well. One of those national standards includes the fact that there's notice provisions that are to be provided to chief and counsel, the parents, and the care provider of the child as well. Again, prevention services are the number one priority when it comes to providing child and family services to the family. Prenatal services are another top priority for the new legislation. Prenatal services are very important so that there is no apprehension of a child at birth. The agency shall not apprehend a child at birth unless the agency deems it is in the best interest of the child. Continuing with national standards, socioeconomic conditions such as poverty or lack of housing shall not be the sole reason for apprehending a child. The agency must show reasonable efforts that it conducted all necessary work to ensure that the child remains with the parents in order to avoid apprehension. All of these must be done in consideration of the best interest of the child. The national standard when it comes to apprehending a child and placement of a child, there is a priority placement that has been incorporated into this Act. Your first priority for placement of a child that has been apprehended is with one of the child's parents. The second priority is with an adult member of the child's family. Your third priority is with an adult member of the Peguis First Nation. Your fourth priority is with another Indigenous family that is not from Peguis First Nation. And your lowest priority is with any other adult or a stranger-based placement. And this can only be done with the approval of the Executive Director. At all times, if there is an opportunity to place a child with siblings or a sibling group together, that always must be considered. Customary adoption practices of Peguis First Nation may also be considered. When a child is placed in a foster home situation, ongoing reassessment of that placement must be considered so that the potential for reunification of that child with the child's parents or another adult member of that child's family must be undertaken at least on an annual basis. If the child is not placed with a parent or an adult member of the child's family, opportunities for connections with the family and the community for that child must be promoted. So there's many components of child and family services. These may include, but not be limited to, determining when a child is in need of intervention, child neglect or emotional injury, child sexual abuse, reporting and investigating a child in need, and emergency care. Other components may include preventative services, voluntary guardianship agreements, access agreements, apprehension and intervention of a child, as well as notice of apprehension and a parent's Bill of Rights. When it comes to foster homes and kinship homes, these homes will have to be licensed by the agency, and agency standards will apply in those situations. These foster homes and kinship homes can have their licenses varied, but again, it's by a prescribed process. In addition, the agency can acquire properties that serve as temporary homes or serve as reunification homes for families, and as well as for transition purposes. Again, these agency homes have to meet agency standards. An important piece of this Act is the fact that there's alternatives to the court process. There's three alternatives. These include customary care agreements, family sharing circle, and community circle of care. All of these processes are voluntary, and each family has to make that decision as to whether or not they want to go into the alternative court process or through the court process with the Manitoba Court of Queen's Bench or provincial court at their discretion. With respect to customary care agreements provide care through planning in a way that is sensitive to the needs and the cultural identity of the child. This is an agreement with the parents, the agency, and the customary caregiver. The parents are still considered the legal guardians of the child, and the best interests of the child always apply. An interesting fact of this is that customary care agreements can go beyond the age of majority. With regards to Family Sharing Circle, a Family Sharing Circle coordinator brings together the parents, child and family, and any other individuals requested to participate. The Family Sharing Circle coordinator ensures all understand and are comfortable with the process. A care plan for the child or family is discussed and created, and the agency then reviews the plan to ensure it is in the best interest of the child. The Community Circle of Care coordinator brings together the family, the child, as well as First Nation departments to coordinate community supports for the family. An Elders Council assists with the coordinating efforts in support of the departments and the collaterals, as well as proper referral to the Circle of Care. The Community Circle of Care comes together to discuss the challenges of the family and the child and collaboratively come up with a service plan to assist the family to overcome their challenges. The agency reviews the service plan to ensure that it's in the best interest of the child. As I had mentioned earlier, we will still be employing the Manitoba court process. So the Provincial Court of Manitoba will still be sitting in Peguis here for the child protection docket once a month. Meanwhile, in Winnipeg, the Manitoba Court of Queen's Bench will be sitting weekly dealing with the child protection dockets there as well. However, in the future, this Act considers the fact that if Peguis First Nation decides to create its own child welfare court or tribunal, then by all means that opportunity will exist. And if it is established, then certainly Peguis First Nation will then apply to that new Indigenous tribunal or new Indigenous court to deal with child protection matters. The Act recognizes that Peguis First Nation has legislative authority to exercise rights in relation to child and family services. The ability to enter into a coordination agreement with the province and Canada to determine support measures to enable children to exercise their rights effectively, as well as fiscal arrangements to implement the Act for maximum effectiveness. There is a section in this Act that we've titled Acceptance. An Elders Council assists in the legal guardianship of a child through acceptance. We've used acceptance in lieu of the term adoption because the term adoption carries with it some level of stigma. So in order to avoid that stigma, we've termed that as an acceptance process. And again, this process is guided through the Elders Council, and the Elders Council provides that level of understanding with respect to that family history for that child and how that child's acceptance into the new family can occur. Another interesting fact of this new legislation is that extension of care services for those children and youth have now been extended from age 21 under the Manitoba CFS Act to age 26 under our new legislation. As a result, the agency and that youth may enter into an agreement for extension of services up to the age of 26 to support that youth as they enter into their adult years. Our new Act also allows Peguis First Nation to make regulations for carrying out the purpose of the Act as long as it is in the best interest of the child. And Peguis First Nation Council may pass band council resolutions for the operation of the Act as long as it's in the best interest of the child. This Act may be amended by a prescribed process. This includes the Board of Directors for the agency approving those amendments. Then the Elders Council must approve the amendments. Thirdly, Chief and Council approve the amendments. And fourthly, the membership come together to approve the amendments. There is a quorum requirement of 200 members present to review those amendments, and a majority of that quorum must then agree and pass those amendments for those amendments to become law. Our Act also has a 5-year review, so after every 5 years, the Act must be reviewed. After that 5-year review report is tabled, Chief and Council must table that report at the next General Band meeting for consideration by the membership. On January 20th, 2021, notice of intent for a coordination agreement was provided to Canada and Manitoba. And as a result of that notice, Peguis First Nation and Peguis Child and Family Services will be entering into negotiations with Canada and Manitoba to complete a coordination agreement. It is through the coordination agreement that the fiscal arrangements for the implementation of this Act will be determined. The negotiation of this coordination agreement should be completed within 12 months. If after 12 months of good faith negotiations and a coordination agreement is not complete, then Chief and Council have that option of passing a band council resolution to enact this new law. As part of the transitional process for this Act, the agency will assume jurisdiction over intake services, child abuse investigations, after-hours services, and early intervention services for members who reside off and on reserve in Manitoba. Finally, I'd like to thank you for your time and attention. This new act is a tremendous opportunity for everybody to become involved and provide their voices and concerns and questions and comments on this new act. We welcome that. Lastly, this is a historic occasion for our community, assuming that jurisdiction that we've always had, implementing our inherent rights, and putting ourselves in a position for self-determination. Once again, thank you for your attention. Ekase, miigwech.